Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 7 to 7:30 a.m. session of the 2024 Open Simulator Community Conference. A big hello to everyone who's early this morning. In the session, we're pleased to introduce the presentation, Converting Lecture Slides to 3D Virtual World Illustrations Increases Student Engagement. Our speaker is Dr. Kay McLennan. Kay McLennan is a professor of practice at the Tulane University School of Professional Advancement. Kay created the Tulane SOPA Metaverse, newly known as the SOPA Metaversity, and has been creating and using virtual world learning simulations in her online economics and business studies courses since 2008. Kay uses student feedback to continually refine and expand the educational simulations she creates to use in her e-courses. Kay will host the Educator Meetup, Spotlight on Educator and User Onboarding on Monday, 9th of December at 10 a.m. Please check out the website found at conference.opensimulator.org for speaker bio, details of session, and the full schedule of events. This session is being live streamed and recorded, so if you have any questions or comments during the session, you may send tweets to OpenSimCC with the hashtag OSCC24. Welcome, everyone. Let's begin the session.
Thank you, Heike, and good morning to everyone, either in world or online in the streaming version. I am going to talk about one of what I consider to be my most exciting discoveries in OpenSim and Second Life, and that is how college students have favorably responded to 3D illustrations. So what I'm going to start with is a bit of an overview of online student preferences for digital simulations, student views of 3D illustrations, how I constructed and used these 3D illustrations, what my key takeaway from both walk-around-in and 3D illustration simulations, and where we're headed in terms of upcoming AI developments in 3D illustrations, and then a really critical barrier to the wider use of all aspects of 3D activities and simulations, and that's the steep learning curve and the difficulties onboarding faculty. I first want to give a shout out to the walk-around virtual simulations that I have used for such a long time. I'm not going to waste time, going through that this time. But if I'm doing my speakeasy text presentation properly, you should get a link to the YouTube video clip that'll show you more about the kind of walk-in virtual simulations I used for more than 10 years. But first, during the pandemic, when we had the mass move from our LMS system and completely online courses to webinars, on-ground courses were moved to webinars, students became completely familiar with the use at our school of Zoom webinars and even came to demand it. So all of our completely online courses now offer 2 to 4 webinars per semester. And students have come to find that 73% strongly agree that webinars contribute to online learning, and only 27% just agree. So in other words, no students disagree with the statement that webinars contribute to online learning. Well, this is a fabulous development. And also, the first thing that occurred to me was, wow, now that we know that students know how to use Zoom and webinars and are familiar with it, I can teach them how to access virtual worlds via this new platform. But it turns out students were found that they had online overload. And I went from a consistent about 1 in 3 or 33% interest in going into a virtual simulation down to less than 10%. So as a result of students' newfound disinterest in even a third of them taking advantage of the virtual simulations, I decided to try something new, and that was to convert samples of my flat 3D slides that I use within a Zoom presentation, and I also use Mentimeter, so they're interactive, to 3D dioramas that I pan over. And for 4 semesters now, I have created 3 samples that I throw into my webinars in each of my classes, and then I've been collecting data. On the screen now, you can see how I converted a business ethics topic of the ethics programs into a diorama. Also on the screen now is a second example in the health economics class I teach, where I took a flat slide on health externalities and converted it into 3D illustrations. In general, when I first started mentioning this to students, their in-theory agreement was about half and half, which I thought was brilliant. Again, I had increased interest in terms of, positive reaction and interest in it from 33% or 1 in 3 to 50%. The first semester I offered these 3D illustrations, I only had collected data via a Likert scale with 3 choices: agree, no difference, and disagree. And from that survey, I collected 45% agreed that 3D illustrations were more engaging. Now, the bottom line is that that was still more than 33%. But having teenagers myself and young college students, I know that my children aren't willing to commit to anything absolutely. So I created a 5-choice Likert scale, which somewhat more engaging, extremely more engaging, no change, somewhat less engaging, less engaging. And all of a sudden, between somewhat and more, the students had agreement of 68%, which is, to my way of thinking, astronomical. Still, there's something to keep in mind, and that is that not all of these 3D illustrations are equal. The most effective and the ones that were the most warmly received by students were in my health economics class. And in this case, I was able to get a lot of content from the SL Marketplace and was able to get lots of, health related illustrations, equipment, and things like that. And the types of feedback I received was that the illustrations are a breath of fresh air. They make learning more fun, exciting. Having the option of virtual world illustrations helped one student's concentration. However, in terms of negative feedback, what I discovered was that when I took shortcuts and used less content and more slide-like illustrations within my 3D illustrations, I heard things like the 3D illustrations are too busy, and that some students were concerned that they would lose access to the slide deck because they use it for studying, and I was able to reassure them that they would not. In terms of how I stage these different sets, the first few semesters I used them. I had them lined up, and I used little sticks attached to the linked together presentations and pulled them into the stage that I was in front of. But then I went up into a Sky platform and I leave them set up, and that turned out to be just a little bit easier to manage during a webinar. In terms of axioms for student feedback, in every regard, whether it's a walk around virtual activity or even these 3D illustrations, it has to be optional. Since I did get some accessibility concerns related to my use of 3D illustrations, there was a couple of students that thought it was too overwhelming, too busy. I simultaneously run the flat slides with the 3D illustrations. Time is always a factor for students, and this is harking back to walk around in illustrations. So any simulation you use has to be course specific, has to pass the, is this going to be on the test? And also, if you're using walk around simulations, I recommend pre-creating avatars for students. And some simulations are rated higher. Some resonate with students more. So that's why I always survey students after I introduce simulations, especially when I'm doing new experiments. But even with time-tested experiments, I like to see how students' interests evolve. And then finally, be your own help desk. One of the things that is upcoming is Convai, CONVAI, as an AI avatar where faculty will be able to set up scenarios and case studies where they give the characters backstories, have them set up rules that you can engage with the characters on. And this is going to be phenomenal, if you ask me, when it comes to 3D illustrations in webinar lectures, where I can have the characters all set up and then within the class can motivate interactivity with having students ask the avatar questions, AI avatar. So more to come on that. And I am hoping that we're going to get some insights into what Second Life is going to be doing about this afternoon. More to come on that. But still, back to just basic faculty onboarding. I had last summer, I staged a summer in the SOPA Metaversity where I took everything down to sort of basic elements of, I gave faculty a box of furniture. Everybody had their own little building. They even had outdoor platforms because it's easier to build on a platform than going straight into a building. And it was across the board just too much. And as you can see, what I've got on the screen now is some furniture up in the air. These were my top producers of fellow faculty in the workshop that just left all their stuff up in the air. So tomorrow is, if your schedule allows, we're going to have a meetup over on Expo Zone 3 in this OSCC grid. I hope you can come and share your thoughts. And if we have any time left over, I want to open it up to comments and questions. I've sort of barely managed to keep my slideshow plus the speakeasy going. So Heike or Lear, is there anything I missed in the way of questions throughout?
So far, I haven't spotted any, but we welcome the audience to post questions to Kay because we have a little bit more time left. And whilst you are perhaps typing to ask Kay some questions, can I ask you, Kay, the students, your students, what age groups are they? Do you also have older folks who are sort of having more difficulties entering Second Life?
In terms of the students that I teach are mostly undergraduates, and in terms of their age, it ranges from traditional age students to older mid-career age students. The average age, most recently that I heard, was about 27 years old, continuing students. And in terms of faculty, getting in-world and being able to use the platform, at my academic unit, we have this tradition that's been going on for a few years where we do flash presentations. And I was able to do a flash presentation about some of the walk-around and simulations that I use in my courses. And it generated a huge amount of interest. So that was the impetus for my summer in the SOPA Metaversity last summer. But out of about a dozen faculty members that signed up and attended some of the webinars, they just didn't get very far. It's just so time consuming. So my plans going forward, I'm going to try once again this next summer. I'm going to give them more finished sets that they can hopefully deploy more easily and readily in their classes. But I would love feedback from colleagues in the audience, and if you're able to attend the meetup tomorrow. Does that answer your question?
Well, absolutely. And there is another one from Leah Lobo. How well did students adapt to playing games in World? Were there board game players?
I never had much success with actual game activities. If anybody has been around since 2013 in the platform, I created this data detectives game. And it turned out to be too time consuming and not as relevant to course materials. So I haven't been able to develop board game-like activities that are course material related. I say that, but then it just popped into my mind. I do have a Monopoly game that is about monopolies in the economy in some of my economics simulations. And I do use it. But again, what has been so successful is me being in the driver's seat of displaying, demonstrating, using these simulations within Zoom webinars.
Right. And Kay, there's another question from the audience for the last minute that's left for us. Buffy asks, did any of your students want to stay and explore OpenSim or Second Life?
A resounding yes. One of the things that I heard over and over again, too, from students that never got a chance to go into the virtual simulations, that they regretted that they didn't make the time to do it and were looking forward to taking another class so that they could get an opportunity to do that. And I hear that over and over again from students. But if you think about it, the big impediment is getting a critical mass of faculty. In the same way that Zoom became the de facto platform, just because everybody was using it, it was worth students' while to become proficient in it. So if we start to get some critical mass with virtual simulations, then students will be more willing to learn about it. And then finally,
sorry. Go
Oh,
ahead.
just one quick thing. Even the students that don't go into the simulations, for all the educators that are attending, it's interesting how students seem to value the fact that I'm flailing around with all of these experimental simulations. In other words, they seem to appreciate the fact that I'm going the extra length, even if I'm unsuccessful in my efforts. So
Wonderful. Where your persistence pays off. Okay, thank you ever so much for this informative and interesting presentation.
thank
And
you
as a
all.
reminder to our audience, you will want to check out conference.opensimulator.org to see what is coming up on the conference schedule. You won't want to miss our next session, which will begin at 7:30 a.m. in this keynote region, and is entitled Cultivate, Collaborate, Celebrate, and Innovate. Also, we encourage you to visit the OSCC24 Poster Expo in the OSCC Expo 3 region to find accompanying information on presentations and explore the Hypergrid tour resources in OSCC 2 region, along with sponsor and crowdfunder booths located throughout all of the OSCC Expo regions. Thank you again to our speaker and the audience.